beautiful people, welcome to Bree Talks Books. I'm Bree, and you already know I'm here to talk about books, so let's go. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a recommendations video based on your Enneagram type. So the Enneagram is a personality typing system, and it basically assesses your core values and beliefs, how you interact within the world. There are 9 different personality types according to the Enneagram. Everyone has their primary type. You also have your wing number. So for example, I'm a type 4 wing 5, so I'm really emotional, dramatic, and a know-it-all. So I thought this would be a really fun way to recommend books. I'm not an expert, but based on my knowledge of the 9 different types, I'm going to be giving 9 different book recommendations. And I tried to give a variety of genres and things like that within this recommendations video. So maybe you're a type 5, but you don't like that genre of book that I recommended. Like, sorry, I did my best. I think you'll still enjoy the book. Or maybe look at your wing type and then see if that book is a better fit for you. If you're not sure what your Enneagram type is, I'll make sure to leave some links down below. There's free quizzes online to do it. There's also like the paid version, so similar to like the Myers-Briggs. I've done multiple and I get the same results every time, so I think they're pretty accurate. And if you're already aware of your Enneagram type, here's some books based on it that I think you would like to read. I also just generally recommend all of these books. Anyway, I'm just gonna start talking about the books now. So type 1s are known as the reformer. They seek justice, they're rule followers, they're perfectionists. They have strong values and stand for what they believe in and have a sense of purpose. For this type, I'm going to recommend Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. Now this book may look familiar because it is a Hulu series that came out earlier at the beginning of this year, I believe. So Little Fires Everywhere is an adult contemporary novel. It's set in Ohio in like this perfect little suburb, and it follows 2 different families. The first family, the Richardsons, are like this picture perfect Brady Bunch type of family, and the mom Elena is super uptight, very much a rule follower, perfectionist, very type A. Yeah, she's kind of like a Karen. So whatever you imagine as that's Elena. We're also following Mia Warren and her daughter as they have just moved into the neighborhood and they're renting a house from the Richardsons. Mia is an artist and she has like a secret, mysterious past. So Elena's really interested in kind of uncovering Mia's secret. So she's kind of always snooping around, very much in her business. Their teen kids are friends, so they do try to, you know, act neighborly, get along, get to know each other, the usual, since Mia and her daughter are new to the area. Things kind of turn sour when one of the Richardson's friends attempt to adopt a Chinese American baby. This blows up into a huge controversial issue. There's a big custody battle that's threatening to divide the suburb, and of course Elena and Mia are on opposing sides. For me, this novel moves really quickly because you're always anticipating what's going to happen next. I think that type 1s will like the justice seeking aspect of this story and how it kind of centers around this controversial issue, and it really brings up some good points about interracial adoptions and the fact that it's written by an Asian author. I think that the topic is handled really well, and I think type 1s would really enjoy this book. All right, so type 2s are known as the helpers. They're very generous, compassionate, they're overall just selfless. They want to take care of people. This is like the mom friend or the dad friend. So for them, I want to recommend An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. This is a YA fantasy series that I read a couple years back, and the 4th and final book comes out in like less than a week, I think. Getting into what the series is about, this is an ancient Roman inspired fantasy story, and it follows Laya. She is of the lowest class. She lives in like the back alleys of the empire with her grandparents and her older brother. They know that challenging the empire means death. They're very poor and they're just trying to get by, keep their heads down and survive. So our main character Laya is very kind, she's compassionate, she takes care of her grandparents, and she knows the importance of her surviving for them, so she doesn't like to step out of line or anything that would cause her to be, you know, sold into slavery or taken as a concubine. Oh, I did not mention trigger warnings for this. It is YA, so it's not as graphic as maybe an adult novel. There is an attempted rape in this one, so be aware of that before going into it. What kind of sets off the plot of the story is that Laya's older brother is arrested and jailed for treason against against the Empire. Laya knows that her brother is innocent and is willing to do anything to get her brother out of prison. So she ends up making a deal with the Resistance. They agree to save her brother as long as she agrees to go undercover and spy for them. So she has to go to the Empire's most brutal and prestigious military academy, and she's undercover as a slave for the headmaster there. This is where she meets Elias. He's one of the soldiers training at this school. He's top of his class, except he doesn't even want to be there. They soon cross paths, and the choices that they make could change the Empire as they know it. I think this is a great book for type 2s because both of our main characters have traits of type 2s, especially Laya. She is literally risking her life for her brother, and she doesn't know what she's doing. She doesn't naturally like know how to protect herself, and she doesn't have like heightened intelligence and know all of like the political ins and outs of things. She knows that her people are at the bottom of the caste system, right above slaves, and now she is pretending to be a slave, and she's scared. She doesn't know what she's doing. She doesn't know if she can trust the Resistance, but none of that matters because she's there to save her brother, and she never loses sight of that, and she also desperately wants to help and protect those in the lower class. I absolutely love this book. I cried. I also didn't mention that this is like a magical trial and lots of political intrigue. Highly recommend for everyone, but I think type 2s especially will relate to our main character, Laya. So type 3s are the achievers. They're success-driven, charismatic, very charming, and overall just hardworking and a bit competitive. So for type 3s, I'm recommending Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. So this is an adult romance novel that I read earlier this year. It's super fun and even has a Prince Charming in it. So the premise of this story is that we're following Alex. He's the first son of the United States. After attending the royal wedding in England, the tabloids accuse Alex of hating Prince Henry.
Which is true.
But that's not the point. The point is that they have a political scandal, and it's Alex's mom's re-election year. So Alex and Henry end up having to have this fake friendship. It's a whole media stunt, basically, to prove that they get along. That is until they start hanging out a bit more and things turn a little bit spicy. So yes, our main character Alex is bisexual, and he's coming to terms with that in the story. Alex is very driven. He has a lot of political aspirations. He wants to go into law school and basically follow in his mother's footsteps. But he understands that people like him, bisexual and half Hispanic, are not always welcome to all audiences. He's very much aware of that. This causes him to have a lot of internal conflict and just insecurities about his sexuality and his family in general. There's lots of different like family dramas and things revealed or like exposed. And it definitely reminds me because the main characters are in like their really early 20s. And I remember like that feeling of, am I a real adult now? Like, what do I do? And yeah, Alex is having a lot of those same types of issues. I feel like when you get older, like you're more aware of family secrets, and that's also a thing, especially given that he's from, you know, a family of politicians. Prince Henry also deals with a lot of family drama and political controversy. There are definitely certain expectations that are put on him as the prince, and he's not really about that life. So problems ensue from there. This is like a play on the hate to love trope, except that it's different because the hate is definitely one-sided and it's almost like fake dating, but not, because it's a fake friendship. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, it's just super fun. Lots of romance and a really good time. I think type 3s will enjoy this because so many of the characters in here are like go-getters and just driven and won't back down for what they believe in, and just overall awesome. This book made me laugh. It made me cry, like tears of joy. I was just purely happy reading this. I've heard that the queer representation in this novel is really accurate and done well. I believe its own voices in that sense. I can't really speak to the representation of Hispanic culture in this book. I would definitely look for own voices reviewers on that. Overall, I think this book is super fun, diverse, and as somebody who doesn't read a whole lot of romance, I was a fan of this one. All right, so now on to type 4s. So this is my Enneagram type. So really all of the books mentioned in this video I think are good books for type 4s to read since I enjoyed all of them. But nevertheless, I wanted to give a specific type 4 recommendation. So type 4s are very empathetic, can be a little dramatic.
We're just really sensitive, okay?
And type 4s are known to be really creative and are known for their desire for authenticity and to be unique and also cry. The book that I'm recommending for type 4s is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Jenkins Reid. This book I read on audio a few years ago, and I absolutely loved it. It's an adult historical fiction novel. At the beginning of the novel, it's present day, and our main character, Evelyn Hugo, is a retired Hollywood movie star, and in her older age, she's kind of reserved. She keeps to herself and is quite private, and she requests young reporter Monique Grant to interview her about her life story and gives her permission to publish it in her magazine. So Monique is the most surprised out of all of this. She's very much up and coming and is not established yet as a reporter, and she's not really sure why this extremely famous, iconic woman wants her to conduct this interview, but of course she's going to take this opportunity. So the book is told in interview style, and when I first heard that, I thought like, oh, that's gonna be weird, because I usually don't like stories about famous people, and I didn't know how like the interview thing would work. So that's why I picked it up on audiobook. And after reading it, I think that either format would be fantastic, but I highly recommend the audiobook because the narrator is that good. And the way that Taylor Jenkins Reid tells the story, just with like the writing and the format of the plot, she does a really good job structuring it so that it definitely feels like a story, and I kind of forgot that it was an interview until Monique would speak. So Evelyn is recounting on all of her 7 husbands and her experience being a Hollywood actress during the 1950s all the way through the 1980s. Things are even more complicated for Evelyn because she's Latinx, and if I'm remembering correctly, she's half Cuban. So she dyes her hair blonde and is passing off as white in order to get roles and things like that. And then she also is bisexual, but she's in the closet because she knows that with her career, she's not allowed to love who she wants to love. And that is a constant theme throughout the story. And by the end of the story, all the pieces come together, and it is just this heartbreaking yet beautiful moment. And I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. But this is like the first time an audiobook like made me sob. I had to pause the audiobook because I couldn't hear it over my sobbing, and that's why I think type 4s would like it. Just the general premise of like an old cranky movie star demanding that she be interviewed so that like she can be remembered and tell her story, that seems very 4. I think that type 4s will relate to Evelyn's character a lot. She definitely has a hard exterior, which not all 4s have, but for the first time in her life, she's really trying to be her authentic self, share that with the world, and she's really sensitive and very empathetic for the people who matter in her life. And yes, she's flawed, she's made mistakes, and she has some regrets. And overall, I think this story demands for readers to empathize with all of the different characters and just really, I don't know, it's just like a beautiful experience. And I know that a lot of people talk about this book, but it's 100% worth the hype. I don't know, I don't think I know anyone who doesn't love this book. Even people who hate historical fiction say that this book is the exception, and I definitely think it proves that. It's phenomenal. So next we have type 5. They're known as the investigators. They're observers. They're very curious and they like to know things. They're independent and are prone to isolating themselves, and they're very task-oriented people. So for this group, I'm recommending Middlegame by Seanan McGuire. So I know that I recently talked about this book in one of my previous videos, and I'm going to continue to talk about it because it was amazing. So quick synopsis, we're following 2 twins, Roger and Dodger. Roger is very skilled with words. He makes sense of the world through language and stories. Whereas his twin Dodger is skilled with numbers. She makes sense of the world through numbers and the power of math. Roger and Dodger are not quite human, but they're not gods either. They're also completely unaware of this. Then we have Reid. He's an alchemist, and he believes that the ascension to godhood is possible, which is why he created twins Roger and Dodger. He has this goal of raising them to the highest power, whatever that means, and ascending with them. So the twins are Reid's experiment, and he's very particular about how they're raised and wants to like control their environment so that they don't mess up his whole plan. So that's why the twins live on opposite sides of the country. They don't know who each other are. They don't know what they are. But somehow they're able to communicate telepathically with one another. At the beginning of the story, the twins are 7 and they think they're each other's imaginary friends. It's really cute. And we get to see them grow up. And by the end of the story, they're young adults, like in their 20s in grad school. And they've been through a lot. And no matter what Reid tries to do, or even they try to do, they can't seem to stay apart. Their lives continue to cross paths in some way. This book also has trigger warnings. This novel is both character driven and plot driven at the same time, because we're constantly kind of wondering what's happening. The timelines jump around a bit, and it definitely keeps you guessing on the edge of your seat. Once Roger and Dodgers start to uncover and realize what's happening to them, the plot just explodes and takes off from there, and it doesn't stop until the end. I absolutely love this book. It's really weird, and parts of it are a bit jarring because it can be like super science heavy suddenly, and then it'll go back to normal. But like, don't let that discourage you. So like, because I remember at the very beginning of the story, I was like, I don't know what they're saying, but just keep going, because then it'll make sense. Due to both of the characters being like child prodigies, basically, I think that type 5s will really relate to them. They are raised like in isolation, basically. Like, they have adopted parents who are great, but they're both like an only child, and they really struggle like with making friends and things like that, and just being different from everybody else. Which is also probably why I liked it with the type 4, but anyway. Like, the unique premise of the story, I think, will really appeal to type 5s. I feel like they'll be really engaged with the plot of the story and uncovering all of the mysteries. I think it'll pique their interest with their curiosity, because it is such an unusual book, and it appeals to both like math and science people and like language and literature people, and overall it's just like really fascinating. So I think that type 5s will enjoy it. So now on to type 6. 6s are known as the loyalists. They're very committed, responsible, and protective. They can also be sarcastic and are prone to anxiety. So the book I'm recommending for them is Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. So this is a YA contemporary novel, which I'm definitely very selective of the contemporary young adult novels that I pick up. And this one, I'm very glad that I did. I believe I read this last year. So we're following Eliza, who in her real life is a senior in high school, who doesn't have many friends, is very socially awkward, and has a lot of anxiety. So trigger warnings for that. Eliza's anxiety is a big focus in this story, and like her panic attacks and things are depicted, and as well as trigger warnings for other mental health issues like depression. There is a suicide attempt in this book as well, so be aware of that before going into it. So Eliza has a lot in her personal life that she struggles with, but online she's known as Lady Constellation, who has a huge following and is the creator of an extremely popular webcomic series. Her webcomic is her passion, and she takes it very seriously. She's very engaged online with her friends, and she has 2 best friends online that she's actually never met in person. Her parents don't particularly approve of the amount of time that she spends online. They don't realize how popular she is.
Basically, she's kind of a big deal, and her parents have no idea.
So her parents are a bit out of touch and really just want Eliza to have some friends. Eliza's fate changes when the new kid, Wallace, at school befriends her at lunch, and she finds out that he's a fan fiction writer for her webcomic. And basically we're following both teenagers as they kind of navigate their senior year and interact with their online communities. This book is deep. It deals with some heavy stuff, but it also has like those precious lighthearted moments as well, weaved throughout, so it's a good balance. I loved it. I think that 6s will really enjoy this because of Eliza's character. I think that mental health and anxiety is depicted really well in this book. Now, obviously, if that's something that is triggering for you, might not be the best, but I think for a lot of people that it is empowering to read this, and there's like a lot of validation in this book and a lot of self-awareness, and then just like personal growth in this book. So I think that 6s will appreciate the representation and definitely relate to both protagonists. And overall, I think this is just like a quirky kind of read that a lot of people would enjoy. So I definitely recommend. So next we have type 7s. So they're very outgoing, extroverted, excited, fun loving, all of those things, spontaneous. You get the picture. So for this Enneagram type, I'm recommending Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Tahlia Hibbert. So I already have a standalone review for this book on my channel, so I'll be sure to link that down below. So basically, this is another adult contemporary romance following Chloe Brown, who's a computer geek, nerd, graphic designer, and she's made a list of things she would like to accomplish in order to get a life. So some of these things include like going out and riding a motorcycle, getting drunk, and things like that. The first thing on her list is to move out of her parents' house. So she moves into an apartment, and that's where we meet our second character, Reid, because this is in dual perspective, and Reid is the landlord at her apartment. They kind of start off on like rocky terms and don't really get along with each other. They end up making a deal because Chloe needs help checking all the items off of her list, and then Reid needs help with developing a website for his art career. So the two of them basically have this like hate to love kind of thing.
It's super cute.
There are several trigger warnings in this. Chloe has a chronic illness, so her chronic pain is depicted in this story. And then Reid is struggling with a lot of mental health issues as well and was in a previously abusive relationship. They both have a history with toxic people in their past relationships and friendships and things like that. I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that so that you're aware. There's also an author's note at the beginning of the book that kind of details the trigger warnings. So this book I recommended for 7s because I don't read a lot of like happy stories, and like this book just made me smile so much. I think that 7s will enjoy the list aspect of the stories. Chloe's trying to be more like a 7, you know, and is kind of like stepping out of her comfort zone to have all of these new experiences. The humor in this book is hilarious, and I really appreciated the relationship that develops in this book. It's really healthy. So I thought this was really good and I enjoyed it a lot and it made me happy. And so many of the aspects in this book are very spontaneous. So this book is like an adventure in self-discovery, putting yourself out there and falling in love. So I think that 7s will really appreciate that. So type 8s are known as the challengers. They're great leaders, they're very ambitious, and they seek justice. They want power and they're very quick on their feet at making decisions and protective of the people that they care about. So for type 8s, I'm recommending Viscous by V.E. Schwab. So I know I talked about this book before as well. It's one of my favorites. So a quick overview. This is an adult sci-fi novel and it follows Eli and Victor. They were college roommates at one of the Ivy Leagues. I don't even remember. They were experimenting, trying to figure out how to create extraordinaries. And those were people with like superpowers and things like that. They go ahead and have near-death experiences to become extraordinaries. At the start of this novel, Victor is getting out of prison and he's trying to hunt down Eli. We don't know why. So this story is both multi-perspective and it's dual timeline. So for Eli's timeline, we're following the two in college and trying to figure out how they become arch enemies. And the title of this series is Villains, so it's definitely very dark, brutal, violent, all of those things. Both Eli and Victor are very power hungry, and their characters are both quite morally gray. And I think that's why this book will really appeal to type 8s. Both of these characters really believe what they're fighting for, and there's like an hero versus anti-hero aspect, and I think it's a really interesting depiction of the characters and like trying to understand like their psyche, because both of them are questionably like, is it sociopaths? Both of these characters struggle with empathy, but it affects them both in different ways, or it shows itself in different ways. There's also like the found family trope in here. There's other side characters and things that are really important in the story. And our main characters are very protective over the people that they care about. Both characters are trying to seek justice and have like this higher purpose that they're trying to uphold. So I think that 8s will definitely relate to that aspect of it. And I think that they'll appreciate like this dark academia gritty story. Last and certainly not least, we have type 9. Type 9s are known as the peacemakers. They're very laid back, easygoing, agreeable. They're very supportive to those around them. They're often good mediators, empathetic, and non-judgmental. So for this group, I'm recommending Scythe by Neal Shusterman. This is a YA dystopian novel, and it's set in the future in a society where there is no longer death, no longer sickness, no wars. Humans have basically conquered everything and have created this perfect society for themselves. So in order to prevent overpopulation, Scythes are responsible for ending people's lives. Our two main characters, Citra and Rowan, are chosen to apprentice underneath one of the Scythes. This is something that neither of them had a particular interest in doing. However, their whole family is granted immunity during the apprenticeship, and if they become Scythes, their family will get immunity for the rest of time, meaning they won't be killed. And basically, once they begin their apprenticeship, they realize that there's a lot of political corruption, and they realize that the Scythes don't all follow this same moral code that they have been learning. So I think type 9s will really appreciate this book, because I think our protagonist Citra has a lot of the type 9 qualities, and we get to see her kind of develop as she's thrown into this like new situation. And the ideologies that they're learning in their apprenticeship definitely align with like the type 9s. And the mentor that they're learning from is also very much a type 9, non-judgmental, patient, supportive, all of those things, and just has a very high moral code and seeks peace. So I really enjoyed this book. It's very fast paced, lots of political intrigue, and this desire for peace and justice and just doing the right things. So I think that type 9s or people who have type 9 qualities will appreciate this book as well. All right, everybody, that's it for this video. Go ahead and put a star emoji if you made it to this point, and let me know down below what your Enneagram type is if you know it, as well as if any of these books sound interesting to you or if you've read any, let me know. Let's keep the conversation going down below. And I'll see you all in the next one. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you want to, and have a wonderful morning, day, night, or evening whenever you're watching this. Bye!